Hello and welcome to the Castle Talk podcast, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds from Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming series Young Captain Nemo from Macmillan Books. Tonight, our guest is Christopher Farnsworth, author of the thriller Flashmob, brand new from William Morrow HarperCollins. Let's go to that interview. The book is about a very special sort of hired gun, and Christopher, in fact, the way I've described this, and you, I don't know if you would be insulted by this or if you would think it was awesome, but I thought of this book as basically this is Reacher with ESP.
No, I
How
love that. From now on, I'm gonna say Reacher with ESP. That's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, that's the idea. The idea is that that John Smith, he's a guy with this generic name because he had it. He was given up for adoption very early, so there was just a blank spot on his birth certificate. So some bored social worker gave him the name John Smith. He's had this gift of being able to read people's minds, and he now works as sort of a gun for hire. Sort of, he was trained by the CIA and the Army to channel his gift, but his talent. But now he works for himself and works for the 1%, straightening out their messes. So I really like I like the idea of Reacher with ESP.
Yeah, because he takes, he sort of rolls around and takes very high-paying jobs and lives in the standard hotel. It's a very
Right.
it's a very exciting life catering to the 1%. And in fact, this book, in a way, is about the very peculiar place that we are right now in our history, where the 1% are living better and better than ever before, but also there are so many more ways for resentment to build up and for that to maybe boil over into violence. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in Flash Mob?
Yeah, absolutely. What happens in Flashmob is there's a guy who's created a website that essentially weaponizes the social media and the internet. What this website does, it's called Downvote. It's a darknet site, which means that it's on the 90% of the internet that we never see. These websites that are just essentially unmarked. Google only gives you about 10% of the internet. You put something in the search engine there, and it just shows you the things that are on the surface. But the deep web, or the dark net, as it's sometimes called, are all these websites out there that are only accessible to people who use special software, special encryption. And Downvote is one of those sites, and it essentially is a hit list of people who are hated for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And the users can go on there and they can put up people's names, but the creator has designed it in such a way that it will incite people to acts of violence. It brings out the worst in human beings. You already see a lot of that on the internet. You already see people with this. It taps into this massive resentment, like you were saying, that is already out there for people who seem to have more, or for people who seem to be getting away with the things.
Well, I was going to ask you, in the book, you spend a lot of time with, as they're investigating, they go onto these sites and they read what people say, about
Right,
whoever they've decided to hate this week. And he says something like, "I'm constantly flabbergasted by it," like just how
right,
angry people can get at people they don't even know, and yet
right.
it's like they've become just a focal point.
Right. People are just looking for an excuse, and I mean that's part of what led me to write the books about John Smith in the first place. I read, and this is a weird place to start writing a thriller, but I read *Debt: The First 5,000 Years* by David Graeber,
Mm,
and it's all about the history of economics and about the history of debt and how poor people get poorer over time and rich people
yeah.
get richer over time. And it just occurred to me that there's this whole idea of honor, and even the language of revenge is all wrapped up in the language of economics and debt. You are owed something. You have to pay people back. You have to your honor has been shortchanged. You
Yeah.
need to make somebody pay.
Make
And
them
so
pay.
that's
That's something that they
exactly,
keep
make
saying
them
over
pay.
and over again. Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, John goes to this wedding of a woman he knows who's a reality TV star, and these random gunmen come and start shooting, and it's because they think she's gotten away with something that they don't get.
Yeah.
That's the part of the book that's not fiction. That's the part that's real. Right now, people are incredibly wired into one another, and there's this incredible free floating anger out there, where like I just read a week ago a woman on Twitter put up her medical bill because she was trying to talk about the healthcare debate in the country, and she was
Yeah.
talking about her son's premature birth.
Yeah.
And so she put up her medical bills. She got death threats over that.
Yeah.
She had people telling her that she should be shot for that because she talked about her sick child. It's
I think that
incredible to me and baffling to me.
you have this moment that I thought was really astute, where you said that people often say when they're about to do something horrible, I just snapped, and he goes, but I've seen inside people's minds, and it's more complicated than that. They have a moment to decide whether they're going to do a terrible thing, but doing a terrible thing has this tremendous rush to it, this tremendous feeling of
Right,
freedom. And being a
right.
jerkwad anonymously on the web basically is glorious, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It's addictive. I mean, the internet is also literally addictive at this point. Social media is literally addictive at this point. You get a little hit of dopamine every time you get a response.
yeah,
So you look at that guy who created the anti-CNN meme
yeah.
and was almost outed by the Washington Post, which created its own social media firestorm a couple weeks ago. He was saying that I just got so into it, and I loved the responses so much, I kept creating more and more outrageous content. And there's something to that. I'm not excusing what he's done in any fashion, because you still have to choose to be a dickhead. You still have to choose to be a terrible waste of human space. But it
Yeah.
is literally physically addictive. You're getting a little hit of dopamine each time. And that's what
I
John
can
Smith's talking about. What I love about John Smith is that he does see inside people's heads, and he knows it's just an excuse when they
There are
say, I
wonderful
couldn't help it.
observations. I mean, all through the book, there's all this great stuff about what people mean when they say what they say. And it's that's really great stuff. Um, there's a book
Thank
that
you.
I read a couple of years ago by a professor named Daniel Solov. He wrote it was called Nothing to Hide, and he used all kinds of different examples of people whose privacy had been violated. But a couple of the examples were people who had done ostensibly bad things. In other words, like the person who lets their dog leave its poop in the subway, right? And
Right,
but
right.
somebody else videos this, and that person becomes like ridiculously infamous, like
Hmm.
all out of bounds. Even though this is a terrible misdemeanor that this woman has committed, it's not like, she's not Goebbels. This is just a thing.
Right,
And
right.
I think it snowballs. People just really get I think you've hit it right. There's so much adrenaline flowing that you become a mob. Do you remember the one a couple years ago? I know we got to get back to John Smith, but do you remember the one a couple years ago with the woman who posted something that, if I don't remember exactly, but she posted something that was racist, but also ironic and also
Right.
like parodic.
Justine Sacco. Justine Sacco.
Ah, very good.
And
Sacco.
yeah, she was on her way to South Africa where she has family, and this is all covered in John Ronson's book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which is fantastic and was a big source
Ah,
for me.
yeah.
And she before she gets on the plane, she says something what she meant to be a joke, but was not very funny and could be
Didn't
read
land. Right.
entirely. Yeah, humor is not for amateur kids. That's what Harry Shearer always says on his show. Just leave it to the professionals. And so,
Right.
it snowballed, and so people were waiting for her to land. And in
Yeah.
the time that she was on this 14-hour flight, she was fired. There were thousands of tweets about her. People were they wanted her. There were death threats. Obviously, people wanted her to be humiliated, and have her destroyed. So when she landed, she found out she'd been fired from her job and that she was a pariah. All for this, terribly stupid joke,
Yeah.
and it really did ruin her life.
Isn't that astonishing? I
Yeah.
it's so I in fact, your publisher, William Morrow, passed out what I thought was delightful, a sort of a like a Cliff's Notes of just concepts that are going on in this adventure book. Because, like I said, I called it Reacher with ESP, but the actual adventure that's going on here, besides the psychic soldiers, and I want to ask you about that. You've got
Mm.
things like brain warfare, meaning using technology to subtly get people to move in one way or the other. The dark net, flash mobs, all kinds of stuff like that. You pointed out in Pizzagate in the past year, somebody was so moved by seeing this thing about this child sex crime ring running out of a pizza restaurant that didn't exist. This is completely a
Right.
fictitious. He
Right.
had seen so much about it that it finally seemed logical for him to put guns in his car and to drive to the suburbs of Washington D.C. and go shooting. And
Right.
that's remarkable. But what you're positing in this book is that bad guys could decide to do that on purpose.
Right.
And
Right.
just yeah, it's
And I don't
remarkable.
think we're that far from that. The thing is, we are so plugged in right now, and it speaks to our brains on deeper structures than we know, and it plugs into us so deeply in a level that we're looking that it goes right past our defenses, and we
Yeah,
believe this stuff. I mean, there have been long articles about how the Trump campaign team used these same techniques
sure.
to help influence voters to either vote or to stay home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it may well have helped determine the course of the election. And the thing is, when I wrote all this, I thought it was fiction, but the
Yeah.
more I and generally that's how I start with most of my stuff. And then the more I research it, the more I realize that the world out there is always stranger than fiction.
So you're
It
doing a
always
lot of
gets it
research.
always catches up. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I was a reporter for a long time, so that's always where I try to start with a book, is trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
but do you ever find yourself, you go, okay, I need a thing where he's going to try to take down, he doesn't have a gun, but he's going to try to take down somebody who's got a gun. What do you do in that case? Do you call up somebody you know and go, listen, if you had to try to attack a shooter and you didn't have a gun, what would you do? Assuming a
Oh
human
yeah.
with training. Is that
Yeah,
how you do it?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people who are, either ex-law enforcement or ex-military. For this book, I talked to a couple people who work in executive protection, including Kent Moyer, who runs the Worldwide Protection Group. And he protects a lot of CEOs and celebrities.
Mm,
And so I talked to him all about what bodyguarding actually entails, about what you actually have to do. And one thing he told me that was very important was, he said, the whole job is to keep people alive. So if you're an adrenaline jockey who really likes, the fight,
yeah,
the who really loves mixing it up with people, you're not going to be a good bodyguard. If
yeah,
shooting starts, you should have been out of there half an hour ago. You should have been
right.
gone long before it ever began. And that was a way I'd never really thought about it before, because a
Mm,
bodyguard, their primary job is to keep somebody alive, not to kill somebody else. And
right.
so
Not to see
that's
action. It's not supposed to be
not to see
exciting.
action. Yeah, yeah. It's not 24 with Jack Bauer. It's, what, I've got to keep you safe. So you
Yeah,
are never going to see a wrinkle. You're never going to see anything in the crowd. If anybody gets close to you that makes you even mildly uncomfortable, that's you. That's not my job. I have not done my job.
right.
So yeah,
Somebody
what I
said that
try to
once
do is I
about
try to find.
airport. Oh, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, no, I was just saying, what I try to do is I find people who really do this stuff in real life, and I just ask them. And most people are really great. Like, they are really great about giving their time and their expertise. And I figure I ask a big enough suspension of disbelief for a guy who reads minds, so I try to get the other details as right as I can.
Wonderful. Yeah, the mind reading piece is the funny thing is I found this so exciting as a thriller, and to me the fact that he's telepathic really amounted to me as almost just an excuse for you to have an omniscient narrator, because it meant that you could reveal what other people around you are thinking and so forth. But I mean,
You figured you
is
figured me out. You figured me out. Yep, that's it.
but
It is.
but
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
well, I mean, did you do some research into this? This seems like a very Fortean Times kind of an idea. The whole. In other words, I'm guilty of what I can't remember what page it is. I think it's 111, where he says, everybody, yeah, 111. Nobody believes it's true. Basically, that everybody's heard about the KGB and the CIA and telepaths, but nobody believes this stuff actually happened. Did it happen? Were there like Vietnam assassins with ESP?
This much is true. We really did spend millions of dollars in the Cold War trying to create psychic soldiers who could use the abilities in their latent psychic abilities
Yeah.
as weapons. We did attempt to weaponize psychic warfare. The United States had, I should say, projects like Project Stargate, which attempted to use remote viewing to
Mm.
spy on the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had something called the Institute for Psychical Research, where they used scientific techniques to attempt to prove that their psychics had the ability to move things with their mind, to read or even control other people's minds. And when the CIA heard about this, it started the same thing as the space race. They were like, the Soviets have psychics, we got to have psychics. There was a program which attempted to train Green Berets to tap into their hidden reserves of psychic energy and even then use them as weapons to kill people. And we spent millions of dollars trying to do this, to turn this
Wow.
into a real part of our Cold War arsenal.
So the other thing I wanted to ask about is
Mhm.
just your process. You've been doing books steadily, about one a year or more for the past
Right.
7 years or so. Um, so what's your general goal week to week? Assuming you're working on a deadline right now, like what do you intend to get done by midnight? And what and do you go to the library? Do you stay at home? Do you go to Starbucks? What's your scene as
I
a writer?
yeah, I used to have an office just down the street after I sold my first book because I had a 3-book deal and I had fairly tight deadlines in each one. So I
Mm.
rented an office just down the street from my house. And my daughters had just my daughter had just turned to the daddy seeking missile age, and I couldn't
Yeah,
get anything done at home. So I would walk down the street to this office, and I try to keep like a regular business hours sort of schedule where I would try to write every day between 9 to 5. Both of my daughters are in grade school now, so I rent a different office. I rent a part-time office,
I see.
and I get some work done at home. And I've written in coffee shops, but I try to just keep my head down and type for a good portion of the day every day because like you said, I'm on deadline all the time. And even if I'm not on an official deadline, I need a deadline right up ahead
Sure.
so that
No,
I
no, there
that
will
I
be a
do get this
deadline.
stuff done. Yeah, there
Yeah.
will be a deadline sometime, especially if I want to get I need to get a book done a year. Part
Mhm.
of that is trying to make my publisher's deadlines, and part of that's just because I need to have that project in front of me. The analogy I use is like it's like you have to give a dog a job or he'll eat your couch. My
Yeah.
brain's a lot like that. If I don't have something in front of me, my brain will eat my couch.
My agent actually
So
said that the other day. She was kind of, and I don't know if she intended it as a compliment or not. She goes, "I get it. The busier you are, the happier you are," and it
exactly.
was, it's like I got gotta be doing something. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's the way. Yeah, that sounds like you and I work the same way. I gotta get typing. I gotta get it done.
You have a goal, like how many words per day you want to get or whatever.
Generally not, because there are days where it just doesn't happen. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to be more reasonable about those days instead of letting
Organic.
it
Yeah.
throw me off. Yeah. There are some days there are some days when like, your dishwasher breaks and the kids need you to pick them up at school because they got sick, or
Sure.
there's a dentist appointment or whatever, and you just don't get more than 250 to 500 words done, if
Huh.
that. And then there are days when, there are days when you get like 10,000 words done and you're like, where did that come from?
How did that happen?
So
Right.
yeah. So I try to respect the times when it's not happening and just move on to something else.
Well, also the rules are important. Listen, I read so many books about writing, okay? And
Right.
I do a podcast about writing, for heaven's sakes. But the rules are super important, but they're not we're not machines. The rules are not there are not lines of code. There's nothing that says you have to do 1,000 words a day. There's nothing that says the one that I'm always amazed by is people go, you have to write every day. And I'm thinking, says
Right.
who? Like what
Right. Right.
like, what are you talking about? I get
Yeah.
like Dan Ross.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I know some writers who are incredibly prolific, and I would love to be at that output. Like, Jonathan Mayberry, who just writes, I don't know, what is it, 50 books a year? I mean, the guy's a machine. It's
He's
incredible.
old school. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely for sure. Yeah.
But
You know,
I'm not, but I don't have that. I don't have his endurance. I'll say it up front. I'll do what I can, but I can't do what he does.
yeah. But it's really cool to hear you say that. Coffee shops, in my experience, very hard to write in because of all the noise.
Yeah.
Um, I
I
love
always get,
colleges.
oh, really? That's a good idea. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. We got, yeah,
Lecture halls,
I would,
you know?
yeah, that's a great idea. I love coffee shops, but I do tend to get sucked away into other people's conversations, and then I end up tweeting them, especially here in LA where you get to hear people pitch their screenplay ideas to each other.
Christ almighty.
And
Yeah.
I was listening to these two guys who were talking about, and I tweeted this because it was just, I wanted to see this movie so badly. They were talking about a haunted cruise ship that
Yeah.
literally turns into a Nazi U-boat. Like,
Oh,
so you're on it, and the ship itself is haunted, and it physically transforms into a U-boat. And I was like, I would watch the hell out of that movie. And these
sure,
guys
why
were
not?
just going back
Yeah.
and forth. Yeah, it was
I
sounded.
get it.
I was like,
Ectoplasm
this is great.
somehow changes the makeup of the matter, and sure, I can like Marvel
Yeah,
comic some no prize explanation of how
right, exactly. I can figure this out.
like
But I was, yeah.
sure.
But
It's like challenge
there went my
accepted.
opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and they were just,
yes.
yeah, they were like, I can do this. This is no problem. Exactly. They're like, of course, it turns into a U-boat. I mean, please,
But you were a
the easy
journalist,
part.
and then is there anything in there between journalism and novelizing? Were you a Hollywood writer or something?
I sold my first script when I was a reporter, yeah,
I
and
see.
because I was writing a book, and then a friend of mine who's a screenwriter and a journalist, Keith Sharon, he said to me, "Oh, come on, you're in LA, you're in California now. Nobody writes books. Write a screenplay." So I wrote a screenplay, and it sold, and I got really lucky, and
Cool.
I decided to try doing that full time for a while. And then the writer's strike hit, and I couldn't sell screenplays,
Mm,
and I had an idea for a book about a vampire who works for the president.
mhm.
And so I just turned it into a novel, and I got really lucky, and that's how I suddenly had a new career.
It was the right time to do it. I mean, yeah, Blood Oath comes out in 2010. That's the height of the
Yeah,
vampire thing. So that's
yeah.
wonderful. Very cool. Wow. Well, Christopher Farnsworth, I am so thankful that you spent time with us. The book Flashmob comes out June 27th, 2017. Is about a very exciting new hero. This is actually the second book in the John Smith series, but it completely stands alone. And the book is from William Morrow HarperCollins. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you could be with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the kind words. It's really, really great of you. I appreciate it so much.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks.